While the USDA state reports haven't recorded harvest progress yet, it's certainly underway in this state. Not only did we see a few rows of corn out around this area, we also heard from viewers at the show that combines were on the go, harvesting high moisture corn and in some cases, dry land soybeans. The latest NASS data shows only 5% of Nebraska's corn is mature, while 16% of its soybeans are dropping leaves. Earlier this week, we talked with UNL Extension Precision Ag engineer Joe Luck about why you'll want to do specific yield monitor calibrations to your equipment before you harvest.
Well, when we talk about site-specific crop management, yield data is one of the most important pieces of that information that we use, along with other data layers we might collect like nitrogen application, planting, seeding rate maps, things like that. The yield data, not only does it let us help predict what we're going to do in the field, but at the end of the day it also helps us evaluate what the management practices resulted in at the end of the year. So as farmers are planning that next year's management strategy, what they're going to do out in the field, it allows them to evaluate what they've done in the past and how it's performed. So
specifically with the yield monitor, what does a farmer need to do before he or she takes that combine out into the field for each different crop?
Well, the first thing they need to think about is their calibration procedure for that harvester, the yield monitor system. Every different crop is going to behave differently. Our mass flow sensor, as that grain impacts the sensor, differences in test weight or moisture content, obviously the different crops, soybeans, wheat, and corn, they all affect the output from that sensor in different ways. So if not at the very first part of the season when they're preparing to harvest, at some point along the way they need to be thinking about taking a good calibration, because that's going to allow for more accurate data as they're collecting it.
Any specific tips for that, or is that something that's just in the manual that you'll have the benefit of reading?
Every different yield monitor has its own calibration procedure, so that's just one thing to really keep in mind. Monitors from Ag Leader, John Deere, Trimble, Kloss, AGCO, so each one kind of has their own recommendations for going about the calibration. So the best thing that producers can do is just find that guide, and a lot of them will have a quick start guide for that, and just make sure they follow the procedures. So
now I know there's some free software from the USDA that will help you interpret this data or use this data. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so Yield Editor is a software package from the USDA. And the nice thing about that is it works with some of the other software we have for farm management systems. So you have to have that FMS software to bring your yield data into the computer. Once you bring it in, a program like Yield Editor will help you post-process that data and remove some of the errors.
Where do those errors come from? Just normal hiccups along the way?
Yeah, they're, people have to keep in mind these are just systems. There's a lot of different sensors on them. We might have GPS error in there somewhere. We've also got cut width error, so the harvester might not be harvesting a full header width. And really one of the most common errors we have are when a producer might be harvesting and have to stop or start suddenly, and typically those induce errors into our data set, and it's best management practice to get those out if we can.
At the end, how do you use that data? How can you use that to try and see what you're doing in the field or what you might want to do differently in the field?
Well, a lot of people today are interested in obviously variable rate nitrogen. So we have a formula in nitrogen to predict nitrogen for the upcoming year based on our yield in the previous year. There's other data layers that go into that, but the yield that we expect for that next year is a huge part of that. So people could use that yield map directly to generate a variable rate nitrogen map for their field.
Is it more difficult to use data in a year like this year or last year where drought has made a significant impact on the crop? And is it different for farmers who might use more than one hybrid in the same field?
Well, the year-to-year variation, it kind of introduces another level of difficulty in the analysis. We might have a year like last year, we have a lot of drought, you have very low yields. We can actually kind of use some of that information to our benefit. Even though it was a poor year yield-wise, we can still identify areas of a field that are going to perform differently in that analysis. So, if we're looking at a part of the field that stays very dry and we had yield loss as a result of lack of rain for a dry land farmer, for instance, that might be an instance where they want to consider using a different hybrid, a drought-tolerant hybrid in a part of that field if they're looking to do some variable rate application.